Hello, freaks of the internet, and welcome to it's episode 6 of the Pundits podcast. I'm your host tonight, and I'm going to try and guide you through this week's strange. It's a strange episode this week. With me, as always, a man with a mission to civilize and to educate. He's the ever-present table quiz. Hi, Simon.
Hey, Mike. How are you? And hey, everyone.
Right. Last week we
Your
had a
sound
very
keeps going out. Sorry, interrupting, but your sound keeps going out.
Last week we talked about our top 3 80s movies, and that was a fun podcast. Anyone who's watching tonight, I'd recommend taking a look at that. For our show today, we're going to do something similar in that we're going to move away from news again, and we're going to talk about a list of best worst movies. So movies that we love, but maybe we shouldn't. Some of these movies are going to be familiar to the audience, some will not, but there'll be something interesting to talk about. So, Simon, you've compiled a list. You might help me and see if you can start with running down. Maybe we'll just list out all. Tell us what's in your list anyway.
Yeah. So what I did was I went to a bunch of guilty pleasure movie lists and just looked for ones that I enjoy watching. And
Sure.
There's quite a lot on all those lists, but I just kind of narrowed it down to ones that I particularly liked. So maybe, I don't know if we want to announce all the movies or we'll do them as we go.
Yeah, maybe we'll go as we go, see how we get down. See, first on your list is DOA, but not the DOA that I know. Is that right?
No, not the Dennis Quaid one.
Yeah. DOA. Just DOA, simplistic, very good movie, Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan. DOA, Dead or Alive.
Yeah.
I understand IMDb rates it at 4.8. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So it's a video game adaptation to a movie, and the video game is probably best known for its boob mechanics.
Right.
So every iteration of the game, they come up with a new way for the breasts in the game to jiggle. It's a fighting game with almost exclusively women fighting each other.
Right.
From what I understand, I haven't played the game because it's on either Xbox or PlayStation. So the movie itself is one of those martial arts movies where they're all called into a competition to fight one another, and only one of them can win. You know, like Bloodsport or Mortal Kombat, or any of those kind of martial arts movies where essentially they're just coming up with an excuse for people to fight each other on the screen. And were you going to say something?
No, I was going to say, well, yeah. I mean, there's some interesting actors listed who are in this movie. This movie came out in 2006, and you've got like Jamie Presley, Holly Valance, people who probably weren't big at the time. Eric Roberts, who's been around for a long time.
You
but certainly,
kind of guess what role he plays.
Yes, I guess so.
Eric Roberts is always the bad guy.
Yeah. So, it just, and I mean, again, this is a film I have not watched because just even knowing about the game, knowing this movie ever, the storyline on IMDb, it says a number of fighters invited to DOA, an invitational martial arts contest. I mean, I'm not even going to go on to it. This sounds so like we've got a video game that has women in it in sort of a totally misogynistic sort of way, very kind of early 2000s, 90s video game culture. Hopefully everyone's moving away from that now. And let's just make Bloodsport again, but like with women. And
in bikinis, not even just with women in bikinis.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a movie for the 13-year-old in me, basically.
Okay, and what age were you when you watched it?
Oh, I don't know, 35.
We need to stop the podcast because the police are on their way. But in any event, all right. I mean, tell us about how bad this is. I mean, we're not going to spend too much time on each of these. We're going to try and get through the list. But I mean, is there a particular scene, or is it just some sort of nadir that you just say, "Oh, God, I mean, did you last the entire movie?
Oh yeah, of course. I've watched it twice, maybe.
Uh,
So
So
I
it's a
mean, I watched it.
love to hate.
No, no, I don't hate it. I like the movie.
Right. Well,
This
what's
is
the
a movie
saving
that most people don't like, huh?
Sorry, what's the saving grace then?
Dead or alive?
I think you're looking at the computer game. So essentially, if you're a woman, you won't enjoy. Well, you probably won't enjoy this. I'll say it
Right.
that way, because it's very much a male gaze movie. I don't know if you've heard of male gaze, Mike. Have you?
No, but well, I mean, I've never heard that phrase. Does mean.
So male gaze is essentially if you watch a movie,
Yeah.
okay, that, for instance, if it shows a woman in the movie who's meant to be hot, it'll have a close-up and it'll pan up on her body. And if you have a guy who's meant to be hot in a movie, it's a long shot and he's like wearing a suit or whatever.
Right.
Like Charlie's Angels was the one. I watched a video about this with this guy Rantasmo. So he used Charlie's Angels as his example, where Charlie's Angels, the first movie, is constantly showing close-ups of all of the angels' butts.
Right.
Whereas when there's a guy that they fancy, it's a long shot and he's in a suit or something.
Sure.
So that, you know, the equivalent would be watching a movie and like the guy is in Speedos and it's got a close-up of his Speedos panning up over his six-pack and, you know, chest and whatever.
Sure.
So it's very much, this is very much a male gaze movie. So, but as a straight male, like you can even see from the video you're showing, it's just women's butts and boobs the whole way through. So I guess it's kind of embarrassing that I like the movie, but I mean it's, you know, kind of geared towards me. So that's the women in the movie side of things, and then the other side of things is I love martial arts movies, so people kicking the crap out of each other is good fun too. So by no means would I say this is, you know, in my top 10 or even top 100 movies. It's just a movie that I know is terrible. Like, I know the plot is atrocious. Jamie Priestley is great, I think, like as an actress. But otherwise, the acting is not exactly, you know, these people were hired for their martial arts skills maybe more than their acting skills per se. And like there's a wrestler guy in it, and there's, you know, a bunch of martial artists and stuff like that. But as you know, we used to watch a load of martial arts movies together, and you always forgive the terrible acting because there's usually great martial arts when you got a great martial artist in it.
Well, is there great martial arts in this? I mean, I suppose we'll move on from this now, but I mean, if you know, I would think of the Jean-Claude Van Damme or even Seagal movies back of the early '90s, and well, we didn't know better; we were too young. But I mean, ultimately, there was always there was always some simple story that dragged you along. That sort of, you know, the hero fantasies you like. I mean, is there any element of that at all here, or is it just weak?
No, well, it's a movie plot that could have been written by an 11-year-old boy, basically. There's some kind of, you know, James Bond kind of villain plot to take over the world somehow with some kind of mind control thing or something that they're selling to the highest bidder or whatever, but it's not really very important. The important bit is people kicking each other in the face.
Okay, well, we're going to move on to the next movie that you've set out in your list, and it's Bring It On. All right, talk to me about that. Why you put that onto your list? This is a movie I am familiar with, and I have seen. Obviously, Eliza Dushku. Is that how you pronounce that? I've never been able to do that. Who obviously has been in a number of films, and particularly was in that TV series, which I'm forgetting, where she played the robot or some sort of cyborg.
Cyborg?
You're
not thinking of Buffy, no?
Was she in Buffy?
Yeah, she was the
Doll.
bad.
No, I'm thinking of Dollhouse, which I never saw, but always wanted to watch.
Oh, Dollars. Yeah, no, she wasn't. She was good in that. She wasn't a robot. She was a printed different like brain structures onto her. So they had like an airline pilot. Okay, well they zap her brain, so she's now that airline pilot, and she can go fly a plane or whatever. It wasn't a great series. It kind of fell apart.
So back to bringing it on. What you love about this, and why is it a bad movie? Obviously, I think you've listed that it only scores 5.9 on IMDb, and it's about a champion high school cheerleading squad, and effectively it's at the time was a Kirsten Dunst vehicle. It's sort of a teen romance, sort of them against us, sort of funny kind of a movie.
Well, I'd say the romance is kind of thrown in. I don't think the romance is the main thing.
Sure.
Like, I would think that this is a bubblegum version of Rocky. Like, you've got the underdogs who are never expected to win, and all they want to do is place in the finals or whatever. They want to get in the finals. Same as Rocky just wants to fight the champ.
Well, in fairness, they had been the champion cheerleading squad. They're ridiculous. And their captain went off and stole all of their routines, and now they have to.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I mean, like, so no. Like, I actually enjoyed this. I get the Rocky comparison when we.
You've broken up completely, Mike. We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. This is a film I enjoyed completely. When it came out. I mean, how is it scoring so badly? You enjoyed it anyway.
Well, version of Rocky or of any underdog movie, and that's I totally get why people don't like it or why people would think that it's a bit weak. I mean, the thing is, I can watch just about any underdog movie. Sports underdog movies, like where they're like American football players go on strike, and then a bunch of like nobodies take over, and then they have to beat the professionals or something. That was really good. It was good. I enjoyed it. I mean, it was maybe not a great movie. I think Keanu Reeves was in that, wasn't he? Like all those kind of movies where it's an underdog who's not expected to win, especially if they're putting together a team of complete like nobodies who everyone is undervalued and all that kind of thing. Or A League of Their Own is another great one as well.
Yeah, I mean, Replacement. I mean, it's the Replacements is the one you're talking about with Keanu Reeves and Gene Hackman, isn't that right?
Yeah, I haven't seen it for ages. I think I saw it once.
That is an absolutely great movie. I really, it's one of those ones that often I'll have a throwback to, and genuinely, I think it's an underrated movie. I mean, anything with Gene Hackman is probably worth a watch at some stage or another. But yeah, I mean, you can see even from some of this video here, it's a sort of.
We can't see your video at all, by the way.
Okay, well, it should be coming up, but it's somewhat of a, as I said, a Kirsten Dunst vehicle. That's all I would say about Bring It On. But
I mean, I think it's an indication of how much I like that movie that I have memorized the chant they say at the start of it.
Which is what?
The bit they say, "I'm sexy, I'm cute, I'm popular to boot, I'm bitchin', great hair, the boys all like to stare, I'm wanted, I'm hot, I'm everything you're not. Who am I? Just guess. Guys wanna touch my chest." And I can go on. Anyway.
Please don't go on. Okay, I think we should desperately move away from that. But before we do,
this is going to be the most embarrassing show ever for me.
It possibly could, but then again, it is your list. But
Yeah.
remembering everything in around that time, Kirsten Dunst was in another film about it was beauticians or sort of beauty pageants. So I'm trying to remember that particular film. It was a lot darker, and again, I just for the life of me, I can't remember. But
Right, maybe around the same time.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I just thought it was a better movie in terms of that, trying to deal with similar sort of high school social.
Was it Get Over It? Is that the
What?
one? Get Over It? There was
No,
Get Over It. That was based on
Midsummer's Night Dream.
no, not Telling the Truth. Which one was it? One of the Shakespearean things.
Yeah, Midsummer's Night Dream.
Yeah.
That's actually a very good film. It's quite funny with Ben Foster and Martin Short's in that as well. Very funny. I'll come back to that when I remember that. But
Drop Dead Gorgeous? Is that the one?
It's far more darker film in around that time. I'm sure it was sort of somewhat in around that similar time or a year within, and that just seemed, it had elements. Certainly a better movie. Kirsten Dunst. It just seems to me those films are in around the time they're almost apples and oranges effectively. I want to move on just because we've talked about that going through our list. Your next choice is a film I've never even heard about till it was on this list. I actually love the title. I know nothing about this movie. It's rated 6.5, I understand, on IMDb. It's a movie called Salute
Salute of the Jugger.
of the Jugger, right? Talk to me about Salute of the Jugger. This has to be a film that a lot of people watching will just never have heard about, because, I mean, it's not that I haven't even watched this. I've never heard of it, know nothing about it, never. It's a film that came out in 1989. It's got a kind of Rutger Hauer, very interesting. Joan Chen, who obviously went on to be in Twin Peaks. And now that I see the cover, I actually do remember seeing a trailer for this way back when. Vincent D'Onofrio stars as well, and also Delroy Lindo. So actually, I'm not sure how much all of these guys have got to do in this, but
like the first six people on that list are essentially 90% of the movie, because it's about a sports team, but there's only 5 on the team, and they're underdogs again. They want to. It's in a post-apocalyptic future, and they're playing this sport where the object of the sport is to get a skull onto a post on the other side. So it's kind of like on the other side of the pitch. So it's like a goal or a basket or whatever. So you've got the Quick, if I remember correctly. The Quick is the one who's meant to get the skull onto the post, and then everyone else just beats the crap out of each other with swords and sticks and all kinds of stuff, and tries to hit the Quick, because then they can stop the Quick from putting the skull onto the post. Right, so you get, like, there's the big guy who's got some kind of thing he swings around his head, and then you got the I forget what Rutger Hauer has. Like, they all have different weapons based on the rules. And so anyway, they're out in the wastelands, and there's a city which has kind of got all the civilized stuff. It's got fresh water and food and power and all the rest of it. And they let people get into the city if they're useful. And one way to be useful is to be a good enough team in this sport that they can actually play in the league in the city for entertainment.
Yeah.
So there's like an open competition every year, and they can try and beat the city teams in order to get into the city to be able to live there. That's basically the plot. So then they're playing the game out in the wastelands for the entertainment of people living, in dust farms and kinds of things like that, and earning, a meal for their troubles. And so if they can manage to get into the city, then they'll be set. but they're not expected to get in because the city teams are amazing and they're some crappy wasteland team. So it's another underdog thing. I think we're kind of seeing a pattern here in the movies on this list.
Yeah, but actually,
All
funny
underdog
enough, I
stories.
mean, I have to say, you know, it actually is a it looks like a very interesting movie. Rutger Hauer, of course, particularly during the 80s and early 90s, but even 80s, always worth a watch. I mean, like people could have a laugh at it, but always worth a watch. And in fact, I think one of the notable things one could say about some of the stars, and stars were different back then, the sort of mid-range stars of the 80s, was that they could be good in anything. They could really, bring up a movie to a significant way. I mean, there was an entire industry based on Brian Dennehy movies, you know what I mean?
I mean, the FX ones, or...
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's the thing. We watched all kinds of stuff back then. Like, nowadays... you tend to get the superhero movies and the big blockbusters, and not many of the small kind of this is in a world of whatever with Rutger Hauer in the lead, or the equivalent today. Because Rutger Hauer was like a name star, but not a big star. Like he wasn't like Mel Gibson.
That's a totally good point, and it's very similar to what's going on with the games industry, where you've got indie games at the very sort of cheap end spectrum, with kids making games in Unity for free on the mobile and going to consoles or PC, and you've got AAA at the top end, or spending 500 million, on advertising, and the middle market is gone. The arse has fallen out of the middle market, and before it wasn't just like independent films. Now you've got independent films that are actually quite heavily financed. But the middle seems to have gone out, that kind of movie where it's just like, oh, we're going to do this. I mean, the truth is, it's not as bad in the film industry. I mean, there's loads of content out there. I mean, there's so much content being produced. You only have to go onto Netflix and see the amount of stuff that you couldn't keep up with. But, I mean, there's certain genres of movie where you'd get a certain caliber of star that, they used to churn out these Seagal movies, these, Brian Dennehy movies, or whatever it happened to be, or Van Damme, or Cynthia Rothrock, whoever was the martial artist of the day, or whatever. There was a whole industry based on that sort of stuff. Less so of that now. I mean, that kind of idea of just producing it's still out there, but that idea of producing stars who just do fighting action, they either have to be AAA stars or they're nobody. That's the reality,
Well, I think it's down to choice, because in the digital age, it doesn't matter. Like, they're never going to run out of a copy of something.
Sure.
Whereas when we used to go to video stores, we would get there, and if we got there, like if you went in at 7, they had everything. And if you went in at 9:30, everything was gone. And that's when you went, okay, well, I guess we'll try this random thing. And there was no IMDb, there was no internet, so it was just, we didn't know what the ratings were. We didn't know if they were good movies or bad movies. And when you got home, it was... watch this movie, no matter how much, the level of quality doesn't have to be very high before you'll watch it, because the equivalent is to turn over and watch Gay Byrne on the Late Late Show.
Yeah, well, there was always that. Not knocking Gay, well, no one's really replaced him. But anyway, I have to say, Salute the Duggar, I will say this, I've not seen it. We showed a little bit of the trailer. It's got an average rating. I really like it. Oh, it's not a spectacular thing, but I actually like the cover art. There's something kind of cool about it. They describe it here as Mad Max-esque post-apocalyptic world, provides the backdrop for a brutal futuristic game resembling football. I mean, it kind of reminds me of that James Caan film Speedball, or is that right?
Rollerball.
Rollerball, which was a game.
Speedball was the game that they based on Rollerball.
Rollerball, it has that kind of thing, and when I say Rollerball, I don't mean the remake too. You kind of.
No, Rollerball is awesome. I rewatched it with Matthew.
Mm-hmm.
And like he liked it as well, because it has depth to it. It's not just like Salute to the Jugger does not have depth to it by any means. It's just an underdog story set in the future, and that's it. Whereas Rollerball is a particular like anti-corporatist message to it. Are you messing with the video? By the way, your video, I'm just checking the YouTube, your video is completely blank. It's just your picture. and then my video is showing. So just so you know, so the sample of Salute of the Juggler didn't show. But anyway, I don't know if you want to leave and try coming back in, or we just keep going.
Well, can you see me now?
Nope.
That's very strange because I'm seeing you here. But anyway, we'll plow on. We'll plow on while I try and press a few buttons. But yeah.
Yeah, sure. We'll go to the next movie.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, just closing thoughts on that. I have to say, it does look very interesting. It reminds me of some other type of movies, and certainly from that era, definitely, something maybe to check out, maybe a gem. Okay, next in your list is a movie I've definitely seen before. It's a movie called Tremors, and what is it? Tell me, Simon. What is it that you love about this movie in particular, or remember fondly? Because this is—I wonder if this is one of the oldest movies. Maybe not the oldest, but I seem to recall watching this a long time ago.
Well, yeah, it's I'd say 1990 exactly. So Tremors is about a small town that only has, I don't know, 15 or 20 people in it. And they're in a kind of they're surrounded by mountains, and there's only one road out, because isn't there always?
Yeah.
And people start disappearing. They start getting like yanked down into the ground. And Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward are in the lead, and they find out that there's essentially monsters under the ground that look like big worms. They look like the sandworms in Dune, that are grabbing people and eating them.
Yeah.
So they have to battle these creatures, and essentially the Tremors part of it is exactly like Dune, where if they're walking on the ground, the creatures under the ground can hear the tremors from their footsteps and can find them. So so it's far from a complicated movie. I mean, it's just them fighting a bunch of monsters under the ground, and climbing onto roofs and things like that because they are trying to get away from the ground itself. It's almost like a movie version of The Floor is Lava, the game kids play, where you're not allowed to touch the ground. And I mean, it's a simple movie, but it's a fun movie, and there's a lot of humor in it. Like, it's very, very well written. Like, it shows that you can be making this like B movie schlocky kind of thing, and still write it well enough and act it well enough that it's still very entertaining. One I saw recently, the Irish one, Grabbers. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. Very good. Good.
Yeah, that was very funny, and it was the exact same kind of thing. It wasn't like it was pretty much a rip-off of Tremors, to be honest, but it was well written and funny and well acted. Richard Coyle was in the lead in that one. So, like, I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed Tremors. I enjoyed Grabbers.
Yeah, I remember this movie from a while back. I mean, obviously, it's, as you said, it was 1990. It scores 7.2 on IMDb. I mean, some notable facts. Obviously, Kevin Bacon, a very young Kevin Bacon, appears in this. But I mean, there's a number of people you can see from just a little bit of the trailer that was being played there. You got Fred Ward, familiar to a lot of people in a lot of movies. A lot of movies in the 80s and 90s. Fred Ward sort of top, we sort of crops up as some sort of wilderness guy or some crazy guy on the edge. Michael Gross, who played Michael J. Fox's dad in Family Ties, is in it as well. There's a Victor Wong, who was in Big Trouble in Little Chinatown and played a lot of Asian roles in the 80s and 90s in a sort of a similar position. It did have that sort of lo-fi, low-budget kind of feel that you got in these kind of movies, the kind of Sam Raimi method. The one thing I'd always say is that in some respects, movies like Tremors, although I haven't seen it in a while, and maybe I'll be embarrassed if I was shown the movie again, but because in those days they used practical effects instead of CGI, in many respects, films like Tremors and of its ilk and of its time will actually outlast films like Indiana Jones 4, where you've got this terrible sort of CGI monkeys or gophers that just look silly after time, or even to some respect like the Matrix movies, which is like, you look at it now, it's brilliant at the time, you think, hey, that's a bit janky. Whereas, all these practical effects and those type of movies, sort of slaughterhouse movies and Sam Raimi type movies like the Evil Dead series in around the 90s, in a way they last longer because okay, the stunts and the sort of the effects are lo-fi and pretty cheap, but they're real pretty cheap, if you know what I mean. And I think Tremors, along with its, as you say, its writing and its humor, a talented cast, it spawned a movie. I think it spawned too much of a movie because I could just looking at it there. I think there's been like 5 or 6 different sequels at this point,
Yeah.
of which I've seen none of the sequels. And I don't think anyone's reapprised.
Tremors 2. I might have seen Tremors 2. I don't think it was very good. I'm just looking. The budget was 11 million, which in 1990 is a fair size, but it's not huge. So it's not like a $1 million movie or something, but it's not huge either. $11 million doesn't buy you much.
Not anymore, for sure. But as you say, the 90s maybe that was a lot of money. But again, I mean, like just trying to think. I mean, Kevin Bacon's got first billing in this movie, and I'm trying to think. When did he have his big breakout role? Was he really? Huh?
In Flashdance, you mean?
Flashdance, yeah, Flashdance. I would say was his first breakout role, but that's maybe he had something before that. Just looking through.
Or was Flashdance?
Diner, which was kind of just Footloose. Footloose, you talk about 1984. So actually, 6 years prior to that, he'd done that. He did.
Oh, of course, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Quicksilver, which is a sort of bikey movie, and then she's having a baby with Elizabeth McGovern, who's obviously on Downton Abbey at the moment. The Big Picture, and then Tremors. Flatliners was to come, which was, funny enough, that could easily be on a list such as this. I mean, that's a film that I certainly haven't seen in years, and I can imagine it's probably quite bad.
It is. I love it.
I mean, one thing I would say, it's not on a list we prepared, is, but it's a movie, and I really do think it's, like, I looked at recently, I thought, I must look at this again, I really liked this at the time, was Prayer of the Roller Boys, Corey Haim.
Prayer of the Roller Boys, I never even heard of that.
Roller Boys. Corey Haim, you can look it up on IMDb and do a number on this while I do a little bit of a diatribe on it. Corey Haim was like, one of my superstar kid idols at the time. Obviously, he was brilliant in, The Lost Boys and License to Drive and all those similar type of movies, and he'd been in a number of things. But this was some weird futuristic, post-apocalyptic kind of, almost post-nuclear world. Patricia Arquette is in it as the love interest, where everyone is around on not roller skates but rollerblades
at the time.
What?
I'm just wondering, like, because I just think of Patricia Arquette as being, older.
Yeah.
It seems like, so she was born in 68 and Corey Haim was born in 71. I guess they're the same age, pretty much. 3 years between them.
Yeah, but
it just seems like she'd be playing his mom, but I guess when you're going that far back in terms of time.
Yeah. No. And as I said, I mean, but this film does not. I mean, it's so janky. I mean, I was watching it recently. It's on YouTube actually, but I mean, like, it is just janky as hell. And I just thought this was the coolest thing ever. He had this cool hairstyle, and with cool rollerblades, and yeah.
Just looking at the cover, it just looks funny.
It's just awful. I mean, it's kind of like the whole story has almost got this element of the roller boys are kind of neo-Nazi type of blonde, white Aryan types, who want to stuff out anything that's not quite weird. I mean, I kind of was trying to look at it recently, and I was just like, this is just terrible, terrible, terrible trouble. And I fear that movies such as The Lost Boys, which is a great soundtrack, etc., may not last the test of time. But I doubt it, because I still think there's a lot of quality in that, and the writing and the timing of that, and the story that was there. So we'll see. But Prayer of the Royal Boys, I can confirm, I loved it, but it's bad. But anyway, maybe that's slightly off topic. I think
you reminded me of you were talking about like Nazis and gangs and stuff. You reminded me of Swing Kids. Do you remember the movie Swing Kids we watched at your place?
Yeah, was that is that Patricia Arquette? I'm trying to put the two things together. It wasn't Ethan Hawke in?
Ethan Hawke. No, Robert Sean Leonard, who's
the House.
Dr. House's friend in House.
Yeah.
And Christian Bale was in it, and Frank Whaley.
Wow. Yeah. Of Joanne Whaley Kilmer. Um, wow. Swing Kids. That obviously is just the worst, isn't it? Really. I
Defeating the Nazis through the power of dance.
yeah. Terrible
But,
movie.
you know, it's a movie.
Barbara Hershey's in that as well. Anyone who else? Noah Wiley was in that from ER as well. Martin Clunes is in it. Oh, Jessica Hines. Actually,
Helga.
quite a few British actors. Then I don't know how that.
Well, the Brits always played the Nazis in the
Yeah, I guess. So.
80s and 90s.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. I vaguely remember the advertising and the hype for that. I mean, as much as there was hype back in those days, but certainly there was clearly trailers for it. Because how else would you have any interest in watching a movie like that? But yeah, I don't really remember that as being fondly or something I'd want to watch ever again. I'm not sure if we ever did. We make it? Did we make it through that movie? I'm not even sure.
We did. It was like 2 a.m. because it was when we were teenagers. So I used to go over to Mike's quite a lot, and I'd get there, I don't know, in the evening time, and then he had was it on Sky Movies maybe?
Yeah.
He had Sky Movies and Sky Sports, so we would then watch whatever crap came on until 2 or 3 a.m. and then I would walk home all the way to Rathfarnham, which is like
It was a long way. Yeah.
in the 90s. You were that desperate for entertainment that a 10-kilometer walk was nothing.
Yeah, probably true. Look at this though. I've just managed to. Can you see this? I don't know if you can see.
I can't see anything on yours.
It should be coming through in a second.
You're frozen. You're still frozen. I can't see it.
Yeah, it might just clear itself now. Hold on.
Nope.
No, okay, that maybe didn't work. I'll try that later, but we'll see.
The only thing I was going to suggest was there's a little like at the top of the Google Hangout. There's a little thing that says adjust bandwidth usage. It's like a mobile phone bars kind of thing. If you put that down, I don't know what you have it set at, but I have mine on medium and I've got a pretty fast connection. So if you put that down at low or something, it might work.
Yeah, not sure.
It'll be really pixelated, but maybe at least the picture will come through.
Yeah.
At least we still have sound, anyway.
Yeah. No. Anyway, sure. It's as I said. I was trying to share a screenshot there. There's a screenshot there. Christian Bale and Robert Leonard. Is it Robert Sean Leonard? And it's really weird. It's just really weird to see how Christian Bale actually hasn't.
There we go.
Aged, if you like,
I'm screen sharing now. I probably listen.
I can see that for sure. But in any event, that's some interesting diversion that film. What can I say? But yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's another movie that I don't know. I enjoyed it. It was okay. It wasn't.
Well, I mean, I think it's safe to say that we are, we're lovers of movies, so we probably we forgive probably where others wouldn't. Let's put it that way, and we can find some pleasure in terrible movies. There's the last on your list is a film called The Warriors, and I haven't seen this, but I've certainly heard a lot about it, and it certainly is on lists for movies that kind of you love to hate or are good, but are kind of in a sort of a cultish sort of description. Anyway, it's a film called, as I said, The Warriors. It's got an IMDb rating of 7.7, which, as you say, is pretty high.
Yeah, it's not really a bad movie if you take the ratings. There's 62,000 votes, so it's not like it's 3 people voting it up.
So tell us about The Warriors, and this is something I've heard a little bit about.
So it's from 1979.
Yeah.
And essentially, at the time, Walter Hill was the director. At the time, they thought that gang culture was going to get so bad that there'd be no cops anymore. It'll just be gangs, basically, in control in New York. So they were imagining that New York would be divided up into neighborhoods with a gang controlling each neighborhood, and then there is a militaristic police force fighting these gangs, and this figure is kind of talking to all these gangs on the radio, and he says, "Listen, if we get together, we're so many that we can just kill the police and take over the city entirely. Like there won't even be the army/police that there is." So he gathers all the gangs together in Central Park, I think, and they're all talking, and someone shoots him, and from the crowd someone shouts out, "The Warriors did it! The Warriors did it!" And the Warriors are this gang, the main characters. So they're then on the run from every other gang in New York who all want to kill them because they've just supposedly killed their hero. Whereas in fact it was killed by a rival gang to them, who basically did it just to try and wipe out the Warriors so they could take over their neighborhood. Why is it pinging at me? Oh, you're presenting something. No one can see it.
Okay, well.
So they're in Central Park and they have to get to what is it called, Coney Island?
Yeah.
Which is the other side, like it's miles and miles away. And they try and take the subway, but then the other gangs stop the subway from running, so then they have to go on foot. And essentially they're going through each neighborhood and having to deal with a different gang in each neighborhood. And the gangs are, you might say, silly. Like they're dangerous in that they're trying to kill them. But like there's one gang where they dress up in baseball uniforms and paint their faces kind of like Kiss, the band Kiss do. And then their main weapon is baseball bats, whereas other gangs have guns. So you're going, okay, well that doesn't make a lot of logical sense that these guys with baseball bats are going to fight the guys with guns. Well, that's a quick fight.
And just tell me, am I wrong in thinking that there's some video game relation to this? Was there some video game made in this movie? Yeah.
I think there was, yeah. Hang on, I'll just...
It's quite good. I think actually it got quite a lot. It was a cult film which got quite a cult following, and then this game was made, and I think actually it's well regarded. I don't know.
9.0 the game got on IMDb. It was out in 2000.
On PC, is it? I mean, it's sort of
Xbox exclusive, I think.
Okay, interesting.
I could be wrong. I don't know. It looks like it was on an Xbox at least, but I don't know if it came out in PC. It was a Rockstar game.
Yeah, that's where I think I heard about it. This was the sort of start of their before they went on to Grand Theft Auto and all those sort of all fantastic successes they've gotten with them. With that.
Well, I wouldn't say that. Grand Theft Auto was 1990 something.
Mm-hmm. Hey, with the game. No, well, the game Warriors was before GTA. Is that right?
No.
When was the game?
GTA 3 was 2001, for instance,
yeah.
Which was a pretty big game. GTA 4 was 2005. Vice City was 2002, and that was huge. San Andreas was 2004. So no, these were all before. Like Warriors was 2005, the game. So Vice City was out before it, and so was San Andreas. San Andreas was one of the biggest games of the time, probably the biggest game of that year.
Yeah.
The year before. So Warriors, I mean, they've done lots of movie tie-ins and things like that. Rockstar. Well, lots. They've done some movie tie-ins and some kind of licensed properties and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I can see why it should be a good video game, because you're essentially going through neighborhoods, fighting each gang you find there, which, video games you can make something out of that.
I mean, that seems to be comprised your list, but I mean, what? And again, I haven't prepared a list, but just what surprised me is that ultimately a list like this, I would have thought would have been very much the kind of list where you'd list a number of cult classics, and they're usually cult because they're not hugely popular, but people love them. Like, for instance, the Escape from LA, Escape from New York series. I mean, except you might just say, well, these are just great movies. You know what I mean? And maybe the effects don't stand the test of time. And I know there's talk of Snake Plissken writing again being rebooted. And actually, if they are going to do anything, I actually hope they wheel out Kurt Russell because he's aged very well anyway. But the 80s and 90s were great for movies like that. Those kind of John Carpenter things. The ideas were just brilliant. Nowadays, there just seems to be no great new ideas, new great characters. It's all kind of foundation on something we've heard about a million times before. That's why we see so many bloody reboots. I mean, the Ghostbusters. We love it or hate it, right? That's a movie we grew up with. Ray Parker Lewis with that theme tune, Bill Murray doing his jokes, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, may rest in peace. I mean, this was brilliant, and it was like, whoever thinks of that? Whoever thought of that? Like, the idea of the genesis of that idea, like, that was brilliant, right? And it's just one idea, and then there's a story that is, a simple plot. Okay, we're Ghostbusters now. Well, you'd imagine the meeting there, which is, okay, we've guys, and they're going to be professional ghost hunters. Now, the plot is they've got to save New York, right? Boom, there you go. Give me $7 million for my script treatment. But
there's two reasons for that. I mean, the first is what.
Now they just want to reboot it, and it's actually they're so devoid of ideas that in fact they're going to reboot it with a male version and a female version, right? I have no problem if they were going to do a female version, but the idea of them just literally having no more ideas than just we'll do a male version and a female version, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, but I mean, there's two main reasons for that. So Hollywood is a business,
Sure.
And they're there to make money, and they have to guess that there's a certain amount of piracy that's going to happen. And if the movie is too small, especially if you're talking about cult classics, cult classics tend to be liked by people who are, I would guess, more tech savvy and that kind of thing, who are more interested in, things that aren't in the mainstream. So they'd already be pirating a lot. So if you bring out a cult classic, well, it's going to be pirated like crazy. And like they were talking about the Hurt Locker, for instance, which was a tiny indie movie. And it won the Oscar and then got pirated like crazy and no one bought it. And the maker of the movie was saying, we worked so hard on it for so many years and everyone just ripped us off. So...
But I think the truth is now piracy is such a big issue that, to be honest, all movies are going to get ripped off. And no more so than, like, AAA, blockbusters are worse, surely. I mean,
No, I wouldn't say so, because do you want to see the Avengers on your TV screen at home, or do you want to see it in the cinema?
Sure.
Whereas if you take a movie like, I don't know, like I saw Before Midnight a week ago.
Yeah.
So Before Midnight is just them walking around talking. I saw it on Netflix. It was just walking around talking, so you're not going to get anything extra in the cinema.
I take the point entirely that there are some movies, event movies, and they're deliberately making more event movies for the very reason you're talking about, which is 3D has nothing to do with anything other than being an anti-piracy device. Of course, it's trying to add to the entertainment, but they need to have a reason. I mean, TV and the on-demand TV at home is so good now. It's not like back in the day when we got our first videotape of Star Wars and the videotape was making noise and the sound is terrible and everything like that. You get DVDs and Blu-rays, or you've streaming services like Netflix in 4K or even 1080p. It's perfectly good for a fantastic film like the Midnight series, Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, Before Midnight, the Before series. Those are movies that are beautifully shot, but mostly it's about the writing and the characters. And again, Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke, fantastic films. But yeah, you don't need to see them on an IMAX theater. But the only, so I take the point entirely. That is why 3D is a proliferation of the IMAX. It's all this fake idea that you want to see it there. Having said that, because the only movie I've seen, I think 3D and all that stuff is great. If it's but. For instance, Gravity, I think it must be an entirely different experience watching it at home. Still a great movie, but watching that in 3D in the cinema, I was like, whoa, this is where it's a bit like virtual reality. I'm sure there's some virtual reality tech demos, and you go, yeah, this is cool, but like, why, whatever. And then you see, I hear about this virtual reality
Oculus
demo moment the Smog one, you know, where you're in a cave and you look around and you're in a cave and all of a sudden you hear this fire-breathing dragon, and it's like, yeah, that's when you know this is more than, you know, just some silly tech demo or something like that. So, yeah, but it's piracy is a big thing. I take that point entirely, but I also think for as much as that is, the piracy problem is just worse and worse. I mean, the reality is that these things are getting ripped off before, as we saw in the interview, before it even hits the cinemas. You know?
Well, I mean, like, people in my work think that I'm an idiot because I pay for things. It's like that's how bad it's gotten, that the people paying for things are like, why? Why are you paying for something? What are you, an idiot? You're just giving your money away for no reason? Because the illegal service is worse, or is better, sorry, than the legal service. The people in my office who download films see them the weekend or the week that they've come out in America for free in HD in their home, a year and a half to pay 150 kroner, or, you know, whatever that is, 20 euros, to see it in HD as well. But, like, I'm seeing it, like, long after everyone's finished talking about it, long after, you know, it's a big deal, and I'm paying a massive amount of money for the privilege. Like I said to people in work who do pirate, if Sony, for instance, Sony, you know, a big company, if Sony said for 10 euros a month, you can see every Sony movie, every Sony TV show as soon as they come out on American TV or American cinemas for 10 euros on this service, same as Netflix or whatever else. Everyone would sign up to that. Why wouldn't you pay 10 euros and see everything, all their movies throughout their history, forever and ever? There's tons and tons of movies, but they keep trying to get something that's just not going to happen. Like, people will not move away from illegal piracy as long as it's better than the legal service.
But I suppose, just to move away from it and to finish it, but if we are a generation of pirates, are we to blame for the lack of originality then?
Yes, absolutely.
Because we have driven the content in that the only content we'll pay for is X. And they go, right, well, we're only going to give you X because that's the only stuff you'll pay for. And all the really great stuff we used to make, you're just ripping us off on that. So there you go. So, I mean, yeah,
absolutely. The reason why they make movies for teenagers is because teenagers have to go on dates somewhere, and the movies are probably the least expensive option. Like, that's why you get all these endless Spider-Man reboots and things like that for teens, because the teenagers are the ones that are actually going to the movies. Like, you or I probably don't go to the movies as much as a teenager would. No,
but let's go back to Sam Raimi, genius. Yeah, the third movie may well have been a little bit over.
It was terrible.
You know what? That's like the Star Wars prequels. It was not terrible. It was just not as good as the first two, which were brilliant. And it was
it was terrible.
It is the third Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, right? Worse than any of the Amazing Spider-Man.
I watched them because I heard they were terrible.
They are worse. And I like Mark Webb. I mean, like, you know, his movie with Jason Gordon-Lewis, no.
Oh, Brick, yeah.
Not Brick.
Isn't that? No? Maybe
No.
I'm thinking of someone else. Mark Webber is...
Mark Webb.
Mark Webb, okay. Maybe I spelled it wrong. Oh, there we go. 500 Days of Summer, I haven't seen that.
500 Days of Summer. Watch that with your wife. Anyway, but, you know, brilliant. So he's a great director, he's fantastic. But again, it was just, you know, they've overblown doing an event movie. Event movies are great, but they have to have heart. And that was the great thing about the 80s movies. Like, you know, the Terminator, sort of that. There's a heart or some sort of an interesting sci-fi core to those movies. And that's what's forgotten about now. And it's all just, I mean, Man of Steel, awful. I mean, like, so awful. It's just, I love movies. Man of Steel is almost unwatchable.
But the one before it wasn't that bad. Everyone said that was terrible, and I actually enjoyed it.
I like Brandon Routh, and I thought Superman Returns was brilliant. I
Yeah.
thought it was a good homage to Christopher Reeve, which is really difficult to do. And
Hmm.
actually, if they kept making Brandon Ruth, um, Kevin Spacey, Superman Returns, I would have been as happy as I was when it was Gene Hackman and Christopher Reeve
Yeah.
with Richard Donner. That
Like
was the
I
internet.
agree entirely. Like
That was the
Brandon
internet
Routh, I
doing
think, is
the
awesome.
Daniel Craig thing. They didn't want him, and they didn't want the movie. And it was the internet, and it's bullshit.
It was just because it wasn't. I don't know. They wanted something completely different, and it just wasn't what they wanted.
Well, you know what was completely different? Man of Steel, and it was Man of Shit. That's what it was. Okay.
Well, someone said, I
You know what
forget
the
who it
best part of
was.
Man of Steel was, right? Russell Crowe playing as Raziel, whatever, Marlon Brando role,
Yeah.
right? He's brilliant. The first 10, 15 minutes of Man of Steel, right, is brilliant. It's beautifully shot. It's just a story of the birth of Superman, and it's him with Krypton is being destroyed. It is fantastic. And do you want to know why? Because Russell Crowe is so brilliant. He could do Cameron Fry. His ass can turn cold to fucking a diamond, right? Russell Crowe is that good, right? But I mean, the rest of the movie, janky as fuck, awful, awful.
We were so bored. Like I watched it with Matthew and maybe Daniel, and we were so bored. We were just like, just end, just kill him so it can end.
So
And they just kept slamming into each other over and over.
I
Just
know it was like it was weird. I mean, movies were never like that in the 80s and 90s. Even with the big blockbusters, there was always some sort of there was some sort of level of restraint. Even in Terminators, there was a level of restraint in those movies because it's when they have CGI. It's almost like, oh, we send the team off to do that. Now we spent $100 billion on special effects, which aren't even real. They're like CGI. We have to use them now.
but you can tell when it's like I
So,
was going to say that earlier when you were talking about CGI that when we were watching martial arts movies back in the 90s, there was the martial arts movies with like Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan and stuff like that where it was real. And
yeah.
then you see a Chinese made kung fu movie where they would use wire work and it would look like crap. You go, well, no one can jump like that. No one can hang in the air. So it looks terrible. It doesn't look realistic. So it's like Jackie Chan doing everything for real made it look real because we can't see the difference consciously, but subconsciously we were like, oh, that's real.
Even when he was acting, when you say real, which is like, it was real, they were going through emotions. They wouldn't do full contact necessarily. Sometimes they would.
Oh, no, no, no. I don't mean like that. They're not actually kicking each other or hitting each other. But
But
like, all the
because they're
stuff.
real humans, kind of faking it properly. Always way better than oh, we can't get a gopher, we can't get a monkey. Let's CGI a monkey into the tree. Just get a monkey. I don't care what the animal cruelty prevention society, whatever. Get a real monkey.
But
Glue,
don't even get a real monkey.
glue the monkey to the tree. You know?
Get, get Henson's kid to do it.
Yeah, well,
Like,
exactly.
just,
Exactly. Although,
just get,
I'll just go back to this because you mentioned this. Look, I think Superman Returns to Brandon Ruth was far better than people give it credit for. I do not think that the Star Wars prequels were brilliant or even good, but there's elements of those films which is perfectly fine. There are elements of those films that, and I mean, it's interesting because you as a dad, you know, for some generations, maybe your kids are a bit too old for it, but for some generations, that was their first Star Wars movies, and they liked Jar Jar, and they like, and it was like, that sequence. For us, it's not that way. But I don't think you could like episode one. There are elements of that, Darth Maul, some of the pod racing. Okay, people don't like Jar Jar. Yeah, I don't. Qui-Gon Jinn, like Liam Neeson was very good in that, and Liam Neeson prior to that had done, wasn't a big actor anymore. He'd done a few things here and there. He went on to do a lot of action, obviously, as we know, with Taken, but he gave us sort of pathos to that character, and I always liked Ewan McGregor. I mean, I don't think he loved being in Star Wars. I don't think he was brilliant. He was better in some of the older episodes where he was playing Alec Guinness's, Obi-Wan, when he kind of matured into the role. But there are elements of the second movie which became a bit more detective-esque, and the third movie did kind of crap the pants a bit when they did the Darth Vader reveal with the No, no, where's Padme? Where's Padme? No, Mendoza! You know, kind of ending
Well,
thing.
I
If they'd
saw a thing.
taken that out, I think it would have survived a lot of internet criticism.
Well, I saw a thing actually. I'm just connecting two things. I saw a thing earlier this week with the South Park creators, Matt Stone and Trey Parker, and they were talking about how they make a story. And they said that they line up all their scenes on a whiteboard, and they say that the word "however" or the word "therefore" should go between all those scenes, but never "and then." So, so and so loses their glasses, therefore they go to the optician. However, the optician is closed or whatever, like that. And the Star Wars prequels, just going through the scenes, are like that. They're "and then." So these guys go and do this, and then they 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 do this, and there's never any like twists and turns or anything like that. It's just, and like the basis of it, freaking tax negotiations. Like, who looks at their tax form and goes, this would make a pretty cool movie? Like, that's just not. Like, I've always thought.
True, but actually, that's the thing about it, though. To be fair, I give that credit. It's clearly they knew that, like, why tax. But I suppose the real point is that all of these things, are covered by greed and money. I think that's the point that was being made there, and politics and bureaucracy, and all of that. That I think it's, there's something being said there about the politics and bureaucracy are allowing things to go on, and I think it is a reference actually to the ineffective nature of the international bodies that we have now, and how they're doing nothing to really, genocide is still going on in parts of, the third world, and nobody can really do anything about it. And, a lot of that's got to do with money and interest and politics and the bureaucrats. And I think there is an element to that. What you might say, well, what the fuck is a statement like that doing in what is meant to be a jaunty kids film? I.e., there's no such statement of that nature in Indiana Jones, other than to say we're set in the 40s, 30s, 40s, and Nazism is rife, and that occult Nazism is rife, and that will play somewhat of a role in two of the movies. You know what I mean?
But
a
there's
lot of this it's all,
but Indiana Jones has depth. It just does. It has a different kind of depth. So if you talk about like Last Crusade. Last Crusade is about father-son relationships, and a distant father. Indy doesn't like his father because his father was never there, and then by the end of the movie, they learn that even with the distance, they still love each other as father and son. Like, that's the story. That's the core of the story. Whereas the core of the story in the prequels just isn't there, or at least they didn't manage to convey it properly. Like, I think a big part of it is what we were talking about just a second ago, CGI. They green screened 90% of those movies.
and it's a part because
Like, you can't. Like, you can get an actor to pretend, okay, there's another person beside me. And they can hold that in their head and go, okay, there's another person beside me. Okay, I can do that. If you say, okay, over here there's all these big buildings, and over here there's these spaceships flying, and over here there's this alien that's talking to you, and over here there's another alien that's talking to you, and here you're sitting on what looks like a green box, but it's actually going to be like this conveyor belt thing, and over here is this C-3PO guy who's talking to you, and like the actor's going, I have no idea. I can't put that in my head.
and there's only so much I could fucking do.
So then you get kind of wooden acting from actors who are amazing otherwise. Like Natalie Portman, everyone would say is a great actress. She's terrible in those movies.
Well, yeah, but the shining, glorious shit box is Hayden Christensen, who's not a bad actor. He's not been.
He was good in Shattered Glass. Like, he was good in that.
What's a really good jaunty movie is why is that going out of my head again? Jumper. Directed by Doug Liman, right? Who did the Bourne movies. Rachel Bilson, who's now his wife. Started with that. really jaunty, cool movie, and Jamie Bell's in that. Well recommended if you haven't seen it. Really could have been a good franchise for sequels. You know, it had a nice kind of jauntiness about it. Really good little movie. Really good little movie. You know. So I mean, he could
Yeah, no,
definitely.
I enjoyed it too. I mean, it wasn't like a deep movie or anything, but it was fun.
No, but it needed a lead who could carry a movie, and he was able to do that. And you know, whereas in this movie, he just came across well in 2 and 3, he came across as a whiny biatch, you know, and who just had the corniest lines. I mean, I think he
Like,
might wake up at night with nightmares, you know.
like if they'd have picked a more experienced actor, like Ewan McGregor wasn't that bad in them.
No, nobody had anything great to do in them. I think that's the problem, you know.
Although Ewan McGregor, like if you look at, have you seen Young Adam?
Yeah,
Like he's so good in that, and then you compare that to like even he who is an exceptional actor is dragged down to the level of yeah, he's okay. Like, it just
look, I don't think his role. I think he got better as well in 2 and 3 when he was off on his own doing the detective kind of thing because he could almost just mimic Alec Guinness in the same ways that Liam Neeson's role in 1, being the kind of sagely master who doesn't say very much but just makes wise comments. Actors in Lucas's movies, Star Wars movies, seem to get away with a lot just by saying nothing and going, yes, but blah, blah, blah.
but like I don't know. I mean, I think I look at it this way. So no one has to watch the prequels, and we managed to get 2 good movies and 1 okay one out of Lucas back when the original movies. Like you can watch Star Wars. I don't know how many times I've seen it, but probably at least a dozen. And Empire. Return of the Jedi is not on the same level, but it's still okay. So nothing is taking those movies away, or the Indiana Jones movies. They're still exceptional movies. And so what if everything he makes now is complete crap? Like he's a multi-millionaire.
I also think it's unfair on George Lucas. I mean, like I actually because I genuinely do think that whilst the first 3 movies, the prequels, weren't super great or didn't have the magic, there's a couple of things I have to ask myself: is that because I'm older? Is it because they were really that bad? I think it's both. I think I'm a little bit older when I saw them, and so they lost a little bit of their magic. But secondly, genuinely, I don't think they were that bad. I think they were perfectly fine movies. They just weren't Citizen Kane, you know. And that Star Wars probably 4, 5, and 6 weren't Citizen Kane, but at the time they were released, they were Citizen Kane because nothing like that had ever been done before. The prequels were a victim of the success of the original franchise, which took place years prior to it, in the sense that so many people had copied the original franchise and maybe not improved it, but certainly had perfected elements of it. So by the time you get to, whenever it was, 2000 or whatever, and they're releasing the prequels, it's not good enough to have fantastic special effects or whatever you want to call it. It has to have the charm and the story that we'd never seen before. And it's like, yeah, maybe that's why he went a particularly different route of trade negotiations and that. It certainly hadn't been done before. It certainly was different. But I mean, everything, so I don't think they were as bad as people give it credit to. I just don't think they were Star Wars 4, 5, and 6, and they were never going to have the impact of those movies.
Well, I don't know if just going to look at what rating it's at. Phantom Menace, for instance, on IMDb, is at 6.6. Like it's not badly rated.
Yeah.
6.6 is not amazing, but again, like that's a 3-star movie.
Yeah, New Hope is 8.7, right? Very interesting,
So Revenge of the Sith, which was atrocious, is 7.7. So, I mean, that's rated actually very high.
Yeah.
I would say it's rated too high, really, for what it is. Like, if Revenge of the Sith was rated 5, I'd say that was fair enough. Like, that's probably what I'd give it. That it wasn't. So I sat through the whole movie. I've tried to watch other movies where they're just interminable and you can't get through them. There are worse movies out there. It's not the worst movie in history. It's just not anything I'd watch over and over like the original Star Wars. Which is, it's always disappointing when you've got someone who's made something amazing and then they make something that's meh. Like it's a big drop.
It is, but I also think as well, there's, it's a very hard internet world of these type of movies where things get unfairly, sort of decided before things are even out. I mean, as you say, let's Superman Returns.
Well, like to just.
Andy Ruth, Kevin Spacey, 2006, 6.1. I disagree completely. Great movie. Great little.
6.1, I think is maybe a little underrated, but I think it's okay.
Sure, it's still an okay movie and whatever. But I mean, like, that was a great little movie, and in many respects, very much was. You're absolutely right. If people wanted something different to Christopher Reeve and what it went before, it wasn't a movie for them. Doesn't make it a bad or a good movie. It just wasn't a movie for them. If they wanted something very similar and keeping with that, which is, to be fair, what had to be, which is Bryan Singer, I think, was behind Superman Returns. Is that right? Bryan Singer was directed it, right? To be fair, they cast Brandon Ruth, who is a look-alike when they, whatever, for Christopher Reeve when you do everything all together. So he was aping the original thing. Therefore, they said, all right, to make Superman, well, we're forgetting about Superman 3, 4, and 5 and all the ones with, Richard Pryor and all that, but they were setting out to make Superman 3, basically, right? And after Donner's sort of left the franchise. And in that regard, they did a great job.
Yeah.
I mean, but just maybe wasn't what people wanted, and therefore the internet piles on, and everybody. I think there is a mob mentality about reviewing nowadays in all aspects of media, for games or whatever. All of a sudden, reviewers can say what they like, but I mean, they're subjective people. They're influenced by comments, and all of a sudden people go, "Oh, it's crap." Yeah, it's crap. You haven't even played it yet, and all of a sudden you go to test it, and you go, "Well, it's crap, isn't it?" I've heard the really bad things. And you bring that into your work. You try not to, but I think it affects people. And I think that over negativity is just crazy stuff. But I mean, like, that's just my opinion. And I think it's difficult to review and be objective completely. But one thing I would always say is, like, give everything its fair dues and stop sort of pre-deciding what it's at. Look, ultimately, like reviews are like everything. Everyone's entitled to an opinion, and they shouldn't really. And even IMDb, it's an arbitrary score made up of people who are voting on it. People go on certain sites and downvote games they've never played because it's the console they don't have, right? It's an Xbox exclusive. 0, 0, 0. It's a Sony exclusive.
Yeah, but I think I said this in work.
Movies too, except for different reasons,
I was talking to Parsa in work, and I said the problem is that the assholes of the world are the most vocal.
Exactly.
So they can only vote it down 0 to 0 once. So you do get to see generally what the game or the movie or whatever is actually worth, because the guys who are going in just voting for something out of spite don't number as much as the people who are actually voting realistically based on.
But there is a possibility that people who just don't vote in these things, except people who are the.
Well, that's another thing. I mean, someone reads a book and they love it, they'll give it 5 stars and review it because they went, "This is the best book I read all year." And someone reads a book and they hate it, they'll go and give it 1 star and review it because they're going, "Oh, this person should not have their book on Amazon or whatever." And you don't get many 2, 3, and 4 star reviews.
Yeah, it's about inspiring people to shout or inspiring people to cheer. At the opposite ends of the spectrum. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to be, it's hard to sort of look at products, in their own way. But I've always been like that. I mean, you know me. I think. I mean, I still buy Empire magazine every month, even though I've almost had the last 2 issues. I've bought them and I haven't read either of them, so I'm almost 2 months behind. I think the 3rd thing is out. in the next couple of days. Tomorrow actually is the next Empire magazine. But my thing was always to get information. In many respects, that is gone now that the internet's there. I don't need information about movies. I know when they're coming out. If I want to check that, I go to IMDb. But out of habit, I still buy that magazine. And it's good to read some stuff on it. But the reality is that I don't want to read too much stuff on it because I don't want it to be spoiled. And I never was bothered about. In fairness, they just do a 5-star rating, so it's fine. But I don't bother if a movie of mine gets 2 stars or 3 stars. It may be my favorite movie. A Good Year is a movie that only got something like 3 stars with Empire. One of my favorite movies of that year, and it will always be my favorite movie for so many different reasons. One of my
Interstellar. I just saw.
I saw that. I watched this week. I saw it in the cinema. How did you enjoy it?
Oh, I thought it was great. Like the ending was terrible, but the rest of the movie, like it's a 3-hour movie, and maybe out of the movie 20 minutes are bad. So I went, okay, well that's like a 4.5-star movie. Whereas it got slammed a lot of places. I saw a lot of reviewers who said, "Oh, this is terrible. It's crap."
I don't know if the ending is terrible. I think sorry, I'm out of picture. The sci-fi genre, where could they have gone with it? They could have gone somewhere else, but maybe if they gone somewhere else, it would have been too like other movies. I think it was a very different movie, like a lot of Christopher Nolan's. Like a lot of people didn't like fucking Inception's ending. Oh, what are we meant to think of this? Was it all a dream? Was it this? Were they really in the opium den all the time? Was it like Once Upon a Time in America? It's like, look, that's his vision, whatever. Everything was really well made. It was very different. The sound design, the design of the craft, the characters,
Well, I saw the behind the scenes.
You
I watched the behind the scenes, and or maybe it was an interview, and Christian Bale said that not Christian Bale, Matthew McConaughey. Sorry, brain freezing or going on the fritz. Sorry, Matthew McConaughey said, "Oh yeah, I came to Christopher Nolan, and I said, here's all the movies I've seen, sci-fi movies where I like these cool things." And Christopher Nolan said, "Okay, we'll make sure not to do those then." Like Christopher Nolan set out to make a movie that had never been made before. Like he said, "Okay, so we've had humanoid robots. We're not going to do those. We've had globe, round robots. We're not going to do those. We've had robots where they were screaming. We're not going to do those. We've had, we went through the list and went, what's left? What can I do that hasn't been done before?"
Yeah.
So you have to kind of.
The only thing Christopher Nolan does every time in his movie is he gets Michael Caine to play the same character, with just different lines. And actually, if I had to say one thing, I love Michael Caine, and he has a great audiobook out, The Elephant to Goes to the Cats or something like that. A great audio. He obviously has a book as well. He's got 2 autobiographies, but actually really well worth getting his audiobook because he reads it himself. He's got such a great voice. He's a great storyteller, raconteur. But I love Michael Caine, and I actually think he's brilliant in Nolan's movies. But I did think this one didn't quite hit a beat with me. Maybe I'd seen this.
Well, it was stupid. It was the man who lives forever, basically.
Well, there's a little
like
bit of...
he's meant to be old at the start of the movie, and then they leave for 27 years. He's still alive. Like he's 70-something at the start. What is he, 105?
Yeah, it is in the future, at least for better medical science, one suspects. Look, all I would say is this.
Where they've no science, and yet he lives to be 105.
Yeah, all I would say is this, is that it's impressively different. You and I both like sci-fi. We've seen a lot of it. It has a lot of things that we'd be familiar with in the sci-fi world, but it definitely has its own feel. Like sometimes, yourself, you've seen like a movie like 2001, and then you look and say Alien, and then you look at some other movies, maybe more low-budget or mid-budget movies, and like they're not the same, and they may be telling different stories, but things start to look as though that kind of looks like the spaceship in Alien, or that looks like the one, whatever, and everything kind of looks the same. One thing you'd have to say about Star Trek is the shape of their kind of craft and their uniforms. I think no one's ever copied that. Maybe it's so unique or so parody-esque. But
you'd have to be writing a parody to
like Galaxy Quest.
I'm just going to find something here I can share. Just a second. Oh, come on. And let's see.
But well, just while you look at that, I mean,
So if you see what's on my screen right now,
sorry,
there's a book by two authors. You might know one of them.
yes,
You might notice that the ship looks kind of familiar.
yeah, a little bit. How'd you
It's
get
not
away with that?
well because it's a parody thing. It's a comedy thing. So you know, it's meant to be. It even says in the product of the beaten trail of the topic we were on. So I wondered if maybe we should think about wrapping things up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, I mean, yeah, absolutely. There was one last thing I wanted to talk about. Oh, right, yes, one bit of news, which I'm just going to tell you, and if anyone's listening, is tomorrow there is going to be the first trailer for the new Bond movie. I understand that has been hitting the interwebs. So tomorrow, I think you're going to find a trailer for the new movie Spectre, with
I
Daniel
thought they'd
Craig.
stop
So,
making those. I thought the studio went bust.
what?
I didn't even know they were making James Bond movies anymore.
No, definitely. You're going to probably see the first trailer tomorrow. It'll hit at some stage. If it hasn't already leaked online, which I'm sure it has, you just need to go to NeoGAF or wherever, you know?
Well, it's just, I don't know, for me at least personally, there's zero interest. If they made like a Sean Connery-esque Bond movie where it was low-key and there wasn't big explosions and lots of CGI and all the rest of it, that it was just like the Casino Royale that Daniel Craig was in.
Hmm.
Like that was good because the major things was I don't know what happened. The car crashed and then he got hit in the nuts by the guy with the seat. I don't know about him. Like it just was what James Bond the books are about. They're
Yeah,
not about big explosions and stuff like that. They're about small
yeah,
fry
yeah.
stuff.
I know what you mean. I mean, certainly the last movie, Skyfall, was a little bit more bombastic and a little bit more thing. I think they did that because of the anniversary. But to be fair, his movies are a little bit. I mean, they're certainly not silly CGI, rocket-powered, cars all the time. It's a little bit more based in the real world because Craig's in them.
Well, it's not Roger Moore Bond.
Yeah,
Like it's not that level of anything, or
it
Timothy
wasn't
Dalton.
good at all the gadgets and stuff like that. It was a bit like fantastical, bit of a laugh, you know.
Like, but it's still too over the top for me, at least. Like, I don't know, because I've read the books, a lot of the books, not all the books.
Yeah.
Um, like the things in the books, like The Spy Who Loved Me, he turns up at a motel, and then there's some guys that are going to come and muscle this woman who's running the motel, so he helps her out, and that's the book. Like, it's nothing to do with saving the world or anything like that. It's just him using his spy skills to help some woman who's running.
Well, that could be an entirely different podcast. Yeah, best and worst
Yeah.
Bond films for sure. We'll see. It'd be interesting to see what this trailer, will show it.
Yeah, just
All right. Well, we're going to close it up there. Hopefully, we'll be back next week for episode 7. It'll be 7 episodes next week if we can manage to make it intact. Hopefully, we'll have something new and interesting for everyone to watch, listen to, etc. Anyone listening to this, if there is anyone listening at all, comment on YouTube, send some questions, send us out on Twitter. You can, if anyone wants to suggest a topic or ask some questions, you can get me on @BadBarrister on Twitter. Certainly do that. Simon, where can we get you on Twitter?
on Twitter, scanton, and then my website's at simoncanton.com.
Yeah, and you should do that. There's plenty of cool stuff on Simon's website. You should check out. He's got a whole different array of different podcasts, and obviously he's written a number of books. Right, so hopefully we'll see you all back here in a week.
Yep, see you.